Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to another fine Wednesday morning here in the city of Philadelphia. Welcome to another coffee break chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, he, they pronouns, executive producer, Light Thief Productions. We've got a great show for you today. We're talking Where's the Corpus? You shall have the body has a lot of asterisks. The Constitution is not a suggestion, or is it? Is the theme today. We're going to be doing stories about habeas corpus, DHS ignoring the court again, Nottoway Plantation going up in flames, a ship alighting with the Brooklyn Bridge, and the numbers 86 and 47. I could make a Sesame Street joke, which would kind of be appropriate. This week's episode brought to you by the numbers 86 and 47, and the letters get out of here. Our special guest today is Tim White of Tim's Taxes. And we'll bring Tim up on screen and we'll get started. Good morning, Tim. Welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Hi, James. My name is Tim White. I am a local accountant, the proprietor of Tim's Taxes. I have he, him pronouns, and I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming back. We had you on last year.
Sure. Yes.
We did some shorts for our audience on YouTube and whatnot, highlighting some of the stuff we talked about last year. I wanted to I want to get into talking about tax strategy, but first I want to get into it by way of introducing why we're talking about tax strategy. So of course, I read off a bunch of the current events, and your wife, me, a lot of our friends work in the arts industry,
Mhm.
and there's been cuts to funding, there's been cuts to national grants, there's been grants rescinded that have actually been awarded, um, which I don't think regular folks, if you watch this show and you're just a regular folk and you don't have anything to do with producing something, you probably don't have any idea how much of a complete earthquake it would be to have a grant pulled out from under you. It's like doing a whole bunch of work, and then somebody telling you, "Oh, I'm not going to pay you," even though I agreed to pay you. But yeah, um,
I go as far as to even say they agree to pay you and then they don't pay you.
right. So yeah, that kind of stuff is going on all over the country. It's a weird time, and a lot of my fellow artists have been asking things, even kind of out in the open on social media. What do I do? How do I support myself? How do I support the people I care about? How do I not pay taxes? How do I stop supporting a government that I don't agree with? And I've personally used this kind of used this strategy for a long time. And a lot of people use this kind of strategy that have a lot of money or have a lot of income that they spend every year, which is guided spending, or putting your money where you want it, essentially. Um, what is that? What can you tell us from an accountant perspective? Like, what does that do when you have to do somebody's taxes at the end of the year? What does it do for the tax picture?
As far as guided spending and mindful spending and it's not tax avoidance, it's tax reduction, basically. Is that what you asked?
Yeah, yeah.
I would, well, yeah. So, unfortunately, I have a lot of clients who aren't conscious when it comes to their tax strategies. A lot of and I and unfortunately, that includes a lot of small businesses. They're going through, I mean, because a lot of times we're not talking about a lot of revenue. They're using the little bit of revenue they have to not sustain the business, but sustain themselves generally. So there's not a lot of planning, and I always try to preach that because a lot of times, especially people who don't have W-2 income that are forcing taxes out, they very rarely remit estimated taxes, so they find themselves in trouble at the end of the year with a big four digit bill. So I hate to see that, and I always caution, especially the repeat people that I see year after year, and some of them have been getting better, but still got a long way to go as far as that's concerned. I always preach, as far as the government is concerned. Again, it's not about evasion, it's about avoidance, basically. And I always the I always say the best way to you don't want to do anything that is illegal or anything like that. What you want to do is do what everyone else did, and you kind of touched on that a little bit, is maximize. Like some I do see more and more I've been pitching S corps to people as far as people who are above that first level of, I'm gonna start a little business, I'm gonna make 30, $40,000 on the side, etc. People who are really making real inroads into being entrepreneurs, I generally pitch that so they can save money. Yeah, you don't want to give anyone more than what they're owed. And so far I'm seeing a lot of that. So I think that that is the first line of defense when it not only from a fiscal perspective, but in some cases a moral.
Yeah, I one thing, like y- we all submit. Those of us who work independently, we all submit a bunch of a bunch of numbers to whoever's preparing our taxes, or we submit it to the form online or whatever. Um, and one thing I was telling a potential advertising client, they were coming to me like right at the end of the year, like right in December, right? And they were like, hey, I'd love to see like, what you could do for us, but we don't have a lot of budget. And I I asked them, I was like, have you started your taxes yet? And they were like, yeah. I'm like, all right, how much do you think you're gonna owe this year? How much did you owe on average for the last 3 years? Did you always owe a tax bill, or did you have like enough write-offs that you didn't owe anything? And they were like, oh, we usually owe, 4 or 5 grand. And I'm like, well, there you go. There's your advertising budget. You want to be conservative? Take half of that, spend it with me. It's a write-off for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like talk about some of those things, like some of those places where you can not only put money with people that you want it to go to rather than with the federal government, but also you can do something good for yourself with the money that you would have otherwise just been paying in taxes.
Yeah, I mean, while it's not one to one, you're right. They could have absolutely planned around doing that instead of giving money. Another thing is you can give to yourself too, as far as putting money into an IRA between the end of the year and tax day, up to 65. Well, now it's 7,000 per person. If you now there's some of course all this has restrictions around it. It's not just straight one to one for all these, but yeah, this is the kind of mindset people should have when it comes to they should never get comfortable paying $4 or $5,000 a year. I mean, even some clients I see can't avoid that at all. Like they're making good profit, they're being honest when it comes to their expenses. This is really they're structured in an LLC or like a sole proprietorship sort of way, so they're subject to unemployment tax and everything is straight up right. And so like, but a lot of people, I would say at least examine your situation. A lot of people, I mean, I'm glad that people are trusting their accountants for sure, but a lot of people do not know enough about their own fiscal situation. And just like you said, throwing numbers at the accountant, say, you handle it. that's fine and good, but it's just like you have to have a basic understanding of your own tax situation to have any sort of action, especially if you're conscious about the like, the plight of what's happening, today. Like if you are that conscious and you want to um minimize the amounts that you needlessly are giving to something that you might not agree with, you would want to be asking these questions, even if the everything was, sunshine and roses, if things wasn't getting, yanked out from under people. You would still want to be at very least have a basic understanding of why you're paying this money. And then once you have the why, then you can come up with plans on how to get around it. I haven't met anyone yet that is happy to pay the United States government in any way. So,
Yeah, no, I
but
mean,
yeah.
I'm all for roads and bridges and paying my school taxes, which those are kind of unavoidable anyway. It's just I don't necessarily want to pay for another multi-million dollar plane to go in the ocean somewhere. Um, uh, so some of the other things that I always think of as a small business owner are like donating gift in kind to other to nonprofits. I know it's not a one for one, but gift in kind tends to be a little bit easier on me as a small business owner because I can take that that gift in kind isn't necessarily like it could be a rental on a piece of equipment or something, or what kinds of things like that can you think of that are things relatively easy on the business owner to take advantage of to support nonprofits who are losing support right now?
From a small business perspective, it really depends because when I think of supporting a nonprofit, the first thing I think of is supporting them monetarily, obviously through a donation. But as you may or may not know, the you have to be itemizing to get any sort of benefit out of your donation. Now, with that said, of course, any small business can support a nonprofit without any sort of benefit coming back to them. But as far as anything, as far as like a mutual benefit, um, it's going to be pretty tough unless you are itemizing. So we already are cutting a lot of people who are in the lower income brackets out of that because it's very unlikely that they'll be itemizing unless they own their home. They have tens of thousands of dollars in salt taxes. They or they have a lot of medical stuff that they can itemize. So and I'm sure that that probably was done consciously, most likely back in 2017 when they eliminated the personal exemption. So as far as direct donations with with a quid pro quo, it's going to be pretty tough for just like your average starting off. I mean, there's plenty of small businesses that are very established that have a high number of donations that they are able to take advantage of on their taxes. As far as in kind is concerned, in kind is pretty strict when it comes to like your sole proprietorships. Generally only C corps benefit greatly from in-kind from a tax perspective, because they are able to do things that other uh, uh, business structures can't. And I rarely see anyone who, I mean, I've seen C Corp taxes, I've done C Corp taxes before, but like, we're not, no small business generally is coming to you as a C Corp. They're generally coming to you as S Corp or a LLC or sole proprietorship. So in kind is kind of, again, it's great, but you're not getting much tax benefit out of it. So I guess going through the examples here, I guess I'm saying that our tax system as it stands right now isn't really set up to set up to have mutual benefit when it comes to a nonprofit. Again, these places can donate and they should, of course, especially to causes that are close to them. But I think that how things are set up right now, there's not much tax benefit to doing
So,
so.
explain why somebody wouldn't itemize, even if they have a bunch of things that they've been tracking throughout the year.
The only reason you wouldn't itemize is if the standard deduction eclipses your itemized deductions. So, for instance, again, the things you can itemize on your tax return are medical and dental expenses, and they have a ceiling of 7.5% of your adjusted gross income. So we're talking a lot of medical bills, like a year of where you are getting slammed with medical bills for that to be uh push that needle in any meaningful way. And then you have your salt taxes, which is generally a choice between your income tax. So that's like your state and local taxes or your sales tax for the year. So like people in Delaware, like they're out when it comes to that. Pennsylvania has a 6.6% sales tax. So like unless you're again buying in bulk for whatever reason for your business, you're probably going to be going for salt tax when it comes to that. And then we were talking about donations, and then casualty and losses and unreimbursed job expenses are the five things that you can itemize. So if the applicable amounts of that don't eclipse the standard deduction, which for a married couple is about 25,300, then there's no reason to itemize. The standard deduction generally beats your itemized deduction, at least for this year, for tax year 25, out of maybe 85 clients, I want to say maybe three of them itemized. So that's kind of like a backdoor way of how the the TCJA adjusted things where donation. So it's like, oh yeah, they doubled the standard deduction. That's great. Like, we should be getting more money, but like it has a negative benefit of saying, well, now the bar is higher to for people to get any sort of benefit out of their donations. So that's
Right,
kind of
right.
a so they kind of already were kneecapped. I I would say that I would like to see a study that since the TCJA and now how is how does donations look between now and then and see what the effect of that is? And I gotta imagine that there's a negative effect there.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so when you're talking, the standard deduction being around 25
For a
thousand
married
for a
couple,
married
yeah.
couple, I file my taxes every year. I've been in and out of itemizing. I think I've itemized like three times in the last 7 years or so. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, you lose the benefit of the donations that you make. However, I still think, if you were planning throughout the year to make those donations and figuring out exactly where you wanted your money to go to, I think, um, I don't know. I think that it would be possible to. I know there's a couple of years that's the only thing that put us over the standard deduction was our donations.
Yep.
But yeah,
Like a lot of I have a lot of, church going folk who tithe regularly, that are very, very upset to know that their ties did not get them over the standard deduction. So they feel like they should have, they wanted to get that extra, that benefit. And I have to be the bearer of bad news when it comes to that. So,
right.
um, yeah, just interesting.
Um, let's uh let's talk a little bit about what the tax picture what it looks like from an accounting perspective. What the effects have been even in the short time that Trump has been in office on your clients. Like, like what do you see in people planning for? What do you see people thinking about?
Um, well, since his inauguration, I mean, it hasn't affected anything on the small business side yet. I mean, as far as rumblings in Washington, I know that they are. the salt raising the salt exemption is a big thing, which also doesn't really benefit like your average person because the salt so the TCJA caps salt taxes at 10,000. So like a person who owns like a $500,000 house is blowing getting to 10,000 very easily. So or is a high earner too and has $10,000 worth of state and local taxes. So again, we're talking about things that are now, a family making $300,000 all of a sudden is now middle class somehow. But yeah, the salt thing, the salt adjustment is not. I don't think it's something that like your average person is going to be really hyped for. Even though that's something that is a big sticking point right now, from what I hear with the big beautiful bill.
Hmm.
But beyond that, it's just all been nonprofits and the worrying about funding. That's like been the biggest effect thus far. Who knows what it'll look like next year? I mean, once we see the full, reconcile bill, then I'll be able to answer that a little better. But so far, there's going to be a lot of extensions of stuff that's already there,
Hmm.
which is a bit disingenuous. I saw someone say that they're staving off a tax increase, and that's kind of disingenuous yet true, because it is just an extension of these tax cuts that were put into place during uh, President Trump's last term. So it's a little disingenuous, but yeah, I think next year will be once we have a clear picture of what's in there, what's been extended, what's been left out. Uh, we'll see the full benefit or consequences of this.
Do you foresee or know any rumors of things that are going to be changing? Like you mentioned salt limit, state and local tax limit. Anything else that might be changing or that is rumored to change that is a consideration for most people?
No,
Yeah.
not for most people. I mean, I've heard rumblings about the corporate tax going down again, which is a choice. But yeah, no. I mean, not that I've heard. I haven't heard anything thus far that I think your average person would be excited about. They talked a little bit about the taxing of overtime. That's more of a payroll tax sort of situation, not an income tax situation.
Hmm.
But still, that would inadvertently, I mean, roundabout way of infecting someone's income, which would raise their income, which would raise their taxes. But
Hmm.
I also, you also see these studies about, they do independent tax studies about how the bill looks thus far, and who would it benefit, and I see that the lowest income bracket, their taxes will go up something like 76%, something like
Yeah,
that.
it's quite an increase.
Um, yeah, that is concerning for sure. And I'm hearing that of course, I mean, well, not of course, what I'll say is the top level taxes will be going down. So I think those two numbers are going in the wrong direction, and I think most people would agree with that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I'm not holding my breath for a lot of positivity coming out of this. Is my honest name.
Mm. Um, uh, just going on to some national news. I think you have good reason to not be positive that anything's good's going to come out of the budget negotiation. We've got Chrissy Nome. She's the head of she's the Secretary of Homeland Security. The entire internal security for the United States. And during a Senate hearing, was asked to describe habeas corpus. Ostensibly, Chrissy Nome has a law degree, so I would think that she would understand the concept of habeas corpus. But Senator Maggie Hassan had to prompt her to correct what she was saying. She said that habeas corpus is a right of the president to deport anyone. And it has literally nothing to do with that, slash the opposite of that. So, yeah, I don't know. uh, Words have meaning and importance. I mean, I know, in taxes and tax law, like, there's differences between shall and may and must and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, where, like, have you seen any complete wild misinterpretations of like things in tax law like that stood for any length of time?
Um, I I mean, not any time like recent, like with the with Sarbanes-Oxley. So like Sarbanes-Oxley is a law that came in the bit of Enron.
Mm-hmm.
It created the PCAOB, the which is the oversight. It's kind of like the SEC, but it's like oversight for public accounting.
Mm-hmm.
Because of how crazy Enron was bending the rules as far as getting around the thous and shalls. But yeah, I mean, since then, I mean, from the in the like the accounting world, I haven't seen such a like bending of words like that is concerned. Um, but I think that most of the tax and accounting regs are pretty straightforward in the light of that, because they can see where that goes, how bad that can be for everyone when we lose the thread so bad that we end up tanking the economy and bringing down a lot of people's pensions and
I
livelihoods.
think just for sake of looping people in, because I was alive when Enron happened, but I know like a grand majority of people that are alive and active in places of importance right now weren't even alive then, weren't even alive for like 9/11. Um,
Mhm.
what was Enron? Just give us an
Oh,
overview.
yeah. So Enron was a energy company. I forget where they were based out of, but they were a company that went belly up due to faulty accounting by a firm called Arthur Anderson. So before the Big Four, there used to be the Big Five, and the fifth was Arthur Anderson. And Arthur Anderson colluded with Enron's internal accountants to basically defraud the public. And they would do things by skirting what we GAAP is generally accepted accounting principles. So they would stretch GAAP to its absolute where it was not meant to contort in a way. They were recognizing revenue in a weird way that didn't really make sense. They were capitalizing things that on a massive scale that made their balance sheet look bigger than it was. It was just a lot of accounting tricks to make the company that was failing look like they were soaring. And once once the jig was up, the stock price tanked. And since it's such a huge company, it brought down not only everyone who worked there, but all the other stakeholders in their orbit, and to an extent, the American economy in its orbit as well. So it was a real mess, and it prompted a real re-examination of accounting practices and laws. And like I said, that created the PCAOB, which is the overarching body for all publicly traded companies, because Enron was a publicly traded company as well, including their own regs for just publicly traded companies.
And if
It
I
was a real mess.
remember, if I remember correctly, even that this echoed even through like the .com and then the real estate bubble and burst,
Yep.
and had elements of Dodd Frank were kind of directed at it too, and now Dodd Frank is no longer.
Mhm.
And some people are kind of worried that this kind of thing could happen again.
Yeah, so like yeah, Dodd-Frank was yeah, those are like banking regs. So yeah. And then, we repeal that for some reason. But yeah, no, we get, the door, a lot of the safeguards, I think fiscal safeguards are kind of moving away because, it's not big, it's not splashy. Like, you know, telling just like you talked about like how you're people are young, people didn't live through live 9/11. Like people don't understand the importance of repealing something like Dodd-Frank until it's too late, until the dominoes have already started falling at that point. So yeah, I would not be surprised to see ill effects of all of our fiscal safeguards. um you know it's generally pitched as like, this is good for the economy, this is good for business,
Yeah, it's good
um,
for business
this admin
because then people can just steal money when they want to.
yeah, I mean like being I never thought that, getting around safeguards and regulations and, we're taking the shackles off. Like, some of those shackles are not shackles. Some of those shackles are guardrails and a guardrail is not a shackle.
Yeah, a
And
guardrail is keeping you from taking your own
exactly.
business.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a little concerning to see some of these fall away. And I just hope we can,
So
get through it.
I've been pondering some of these legal reversals, like executive orders removing old executive orders, that kind of thing. Like there's a tradition of not doing what the Trump administration did the last term and is doing this term because it could lead to some real fickle results for people that are subject to the law. And so one of the things I was thinking is, all of these um, anybody investing, their money into any of these things that are being deregulated, or like somebody buying one of the leases for the lumber on a national park, they might not ever get to take advantage of that just because the next administration could come in and just completely reverse that at will. um
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a few articles that kind of encapsulate that sort of like regulatory whiplash, for lack of a better term. And it is, turning off our partners, on a global scale. And I don't know if you've seen this, but like the bond market is reflecting that turmoil.
Hmm.
Where the yield on a 10-year is over 5% now. That's like a pretty common like red flag for recession. And yeah, I mean, not only does it, I mean, we're talking about like being pro-business, but I mean, we're kind of taking the short-term gains and sacrificing the long-term ones when our partners can't trust us to have a uniform policy, or at least adhere to it, not completely
Not Yeah, not reverse
completely
it,
do a
just
full 180. Yeah, that's bad. I mean, I think that's bad governance. Unless there is a true sea change of like how the United States is going to be doing business, not hoping to doing business. Like, I mean, I don't know if the next administration after this administration is going to be reversing a lot of stuff or keeping it, but like, I know if I'm United States partner on the world stage, I'm going to be I'm going to be more hesitant to do major business with us as opposed knowing that the rug can be taken in front of us. The next time we have it doesn't even have to be like a like radical government. It could just be like we do things so polar different than these other guys that is going to be disruptive.
right.
And yeah, we're kind of uncharted right here as far as it's concerned. I can't think of last time in American history where everything has gone from left to right in such a sharp way.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Speaking of guardrails, the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, ignored court orders yesterday to not remove people to third party countries until giving them up to 15 days, or at least not even up to, at least 15 days to respond to a written notice that the Department of Homeland Security intends to remove them to a third party country, and in a language that they can understand. And several people who have been in detention with the Department of Homeland Security, including two people who have active deportation orders. So an interesting thing, when a judge orders a deportation, they tell the Department of Homeland Security exactly where to take that person. They don't tell them just, oh yeah, it's okay to deport them. They say, no, you must deport them to X, Y, and Z, or you may not deport them to this other country. That was the problem with Kilmar, who is still not back from El Salvador, but he wasn't allowed to be deported to El Salvador specifically. Like, that was a specific country that he was not supposed to go to. Um, Two of the people that were allegedly loaded onto planes yesterday were one was being supposed to be deported to Myanmar. Another was supposed to be deported to, I believe, Vietnam. Both were sent to Sudan instead. Yeah, like, the courts are a guardrail, like, for all of this. Like, when like, we're talking about regulatory whiplash. The court is a guardrail against regulatory whiplash, because if the court goes, okay, you just changed that regulation and you just changed that law, great, but the precedent of the past, like, 300 years is that we have to do it this way. So slow it down. Like, you can make some changes, but you still gotta work within the law. Uh,
Sure.
we're just, like, we're talking about getting rid of guardrails. This is a massive one, and personally, I just don't understand. You know, uh, there's all the flippant answers. Like these folks, think that they're radical judges or whatever. Uh, I don't, I don't even understand that. Like, so to my knowledge, most of the people who work for ICE or DHS in any capacity, um, are they believe in the rule of law. Like, they're law enforcement officers, effectively. Um, I don't know. I don't know what would make somebody agree to work within that framework. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, yeah, the what I will just say as far as what I've been seeing thus far, with the skirting of the judge's orders, I think that that is the part that I think the media needs to really pick up more on. Is they're even in situations where judges are ruling a certain way, and the certain elements in the administration are skirting those. I mean, that's what the media should be laser focused on. I think it's just like, here is a judge that says, now in the beginning they did do that, but like, it's like all other things, like it's becoming like more commonplace to just like, well, I'm not, whatever. I mean, they said this, but we're still going to do it because, and now what? Like, we did it. What are you gonna do? Like, and so far we don't see what they have done that. Like, I think that eventually we will start to see some sort of pushback. I don't know what that'll look like from
Well,
the judicial
one of the things
branch.
I said that didn't get noticed or didn't get, like, reported on a lot is In previous cases, the rulings have been narrow. They've been, like narrowly worded and narrowly applicable, so that DHS could get away with, like not doing exactly what the public wants or what the judge was, like leaning towards. Um, but the rulings have been getting more and more broad. So, like one thing that doesn't get reported is like we sent a bunch of people to Guantanamo Bay, and a judge was like, you can't send anybody to Guantanamo Bay. So they took them out of Guantanamo Bay and moved them to El Salvador, right? Like, they follow the ruling, but they follow the ruling in completely the wrong way.
Yeah, they did it in a longest hallway. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, this one, as far as I'm aware, the latest updates that I've read, the judge basically said if you don't turn the planes around and you don't follow my order, like exactly how I meant it, not to the letter, but how I meant it, how I meant it, I'm going to arrest everybody, or I'm gonna hold everybody in contempt, including the pilots of the planes. Which, fair. I mean, I've been
Wow.
I've been saying, like with the busing thing that was occurring before the election, where Texas and Florida were sending people to Philadelphia. I don't understand why Philadelphia isn't just like taking possession of the buses. But yeah, um, uh, we uh, we can talk a little bit about Nottoway Plantation. Nottoway Plantation. I think I've lost Tim there. He seems to have frozen. Um, Hopefully he'll drop off and join back, or his connection will catch up. But I'll go over to me. Oh, there you are. You're back.
Sorry about that. It looks like my internet dropped out of second there.
That's all right. Hold on. Let me see if I can get you back on screen. There you go. All right.
Sorry
um,
about that.
no worries. So I was gonna move on to Nottoway Plantation. Nottoway Plantation, Louisiana's, the South's largest antebellum mansion, um, built by black folks, had been operating as a luxury resort, with 80 some rooms, a couple of pools, and weddings. I don't know who wants to have their wedding on a plantation, but I think our people have been celebrating a little bit.
Yeah, a lot. I've seen a lot of funny things about that for sure.
uh,
Yeah, I mean, it's a piece of history, of course. Like other, history comes in all flavors. But yeah, I you can't be surprised when people of color are jazzed about something like this. I mean, it was a
I'm
plantation. I mean,
Yeah, no, I mean it's the little things in these times. Yeah,
right.
we've got uh, something, um, we've got a lot of existential dread, and having a little relief from that existential dread in the form of something symbolic, and relatively unimportant is good, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing too. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a house that burnt down. I mean, it's okay. We'll all move on.
Yeah, yeah. Although I do like somebody pointed out that the slave quarters attached to the house did not burn down.
Wow, I did not see that at all.
So,
Yeah, it really does got a lot of symbols. It doesn't
yeah,
it?
yeah.
Wow.
Um, the and excuse me if I pronounce this incorrectly. Cathemac is a Mexican Navy training ship. She's a tall ship, and she alighted with the Brooklyn Bridge. Fun fact: we were talking about like the necessity of little differences between words. The difference between collide and allied is moving to a stationary object or moving into a moving object. So, so
Allied.
allied, yes.
I see.
So she alighted with the Brooklyn Bridge. There were unfortunately two deaths associated with that because her rigging was fully dressed. The seamen were up in the rigging, uh, readying to lower the canvas into place, and it's theorized that a couple of them fell to their demise because the where they were clipped in. The interestingly, modern folks working on tall ships have a lot more safety equipment than they did back in the day. Everybody had a safety harness and clip in. Unfortunately, when you crash a mast into a bridge, that's not necessarily going to keep you in place. Yeah. Um,
Well,
uh, so you probably I don't know how many of my viewers know. I'm gonna start this way. I don't know how many my viewers know. I'm a lifelong sailor. The first time I took a helm was when I was 5 years old. I was had somebody asking me how long that was a couple days ago, and I realized it's 44 years. I've been moving boats around. Um, and so you probably encounter this too with areas of your expertise, but like looking at the quote unquote common sense questions that people are asking on social media posts about this elision are driving me insane. Um, just to um, I don't know, dispel some of the dumber things I've seen. One of the most common ones I've seen is why wouldn't the captain know or the pilot know how tall or the air clearance of their ship? And they do. They know it down to the inch. Everybody who has a mast of any height knows their air clearance down to an inch because
mhm.
we can encounter bridges at any time, and they're not, it's not like when you're in your car that everything is built around most cars being able to get through a place, or most trucks even. The bridges are built to what they're built to. They don't really care how many people can get under them,
Gotcha.
unless they're building across a channel or something. Then they might build a lift bridge or something. But yeah, um, on every map, there's a little section next to any bridge or cable or anything crossing over a waterway at height. And it says how high off of the mean low water level it is. Mean low water is when the tide goes out, the low water, or more commonly, it's even off the low water, which is the lowest it's been in the past 10 years, essentially. Um, and yeah, so yeah, they would know what their air clearance is. They would know that if they wouldn't be going up the river that direction. There were things wrong. There was something going wrong. We won't know what the things that went wrong with the ship until after an investigation is done. A lot of people are saying it lost power. It didn't really lose power if you look at the video with the eye of somebody who moves boats around. It's clearly in power in reverse, moving astern, more than the current would be taking it, or the wind and current would be taking it. Um, Something just went wrong. Their boats.
Yeah. So what do you think was? I mean, because yeah, it sounds. You don't want to, especially with some. I mean, the internet is very uh will always take something that they know nothing about and draw conclusions for sure. Like, and that makes sense that, of course, a captain would know how tall their boat is. Um, it's like, but what confluence of things could have led to something like that if it wasn't like either completely out of their hands or some other sort of human error down the line. I'm very curious as to what could have gone
So there's
wrong
several
from them.
mechanical things that could have gone wrong, but it was probably, as with most accidents that end up in tragedy, a confluence of, factors. Two things already not in their favor. They were moving out of their berth at the in on the incoming tide, so the tide was flowing upriver. Um, for most people who've never sailed around Manhattan or any river system that's tidal, the tide push on a river is very fast. When you're out in the ocean, the tide push maybe half a knot one way or the other. You won't even really notice it. Tide push on a river can be 2, 3, sometimes 4 or 5 knots. And in around Manhattan, there's even a section called the Devil's Gate that gets up to 6 knots sometimes. 6 knots is doesn't seem very fast. When you talk, a knot is 1.2 miles per hour, so you're talking like 8 miles an hour. You can run faster than that, but that's the speed most ships move at when they're just moving around in like a river. You don't want to move them much faster than that. It take a long time to stop. They take a long time to turn. You can't move faster than that. Um, so the tide was pushing them in. The wind was pretty brisk and pushing them the way that they were going. And it looks from the video as evidence like they had propulsion in reverse. The modern tall ships, especially like a steel ship like that, has an engine on it. It has a pretty advanced engine on it, and they use that engine to get in and out of port by themselves without the aid of a moving tug. They just have a either a pushing tug or a positioning tug. So looking at it, I'll tell the story of recently. I just took my boat to be serviced. I had to take it out of the water. Now, when you take a boat out of the water, you put it into a sling. You essentially drive it over top of a sling that comes up and lifts the boat out of the water. When you're not there, like when they're doing it themselves, they take a little essentially pontoon platform, tie it to the front of your boat, and it has a motor in the middle that they can turn 360 degrees. It's a little miniature tugboat, and they'll move the boat for you. But if you're there, you can move the boat yourself. So much like this ship, much like the Cathay, I was moving the boat myself. Um, I moved it into the sling, um, and uh, I shifted out of reverse, or thought I shifted out of reverse, and I thought I shifted into forward, and I applied the throttle, but you know it's such close operating quarters that I started moving backwards, and before I could adjust for the fact that I was actually moving backwards when I thought I was in forward, my backstay hit the machinery. So it didn't do any damage, but like in those situations, there's a lot that can go wrong, from human error to adding in weather and tide and all that stuff. There was a very few seconds between them getting underway and them hitting the bridge. There's thousands of things that could have gone wrong. It could have been mechanical. They could have a variable pitch prop. The variable pitch angle on the prop could have failed. Um, they could have had a runaway engine. The engine is a diesel. Sometimes they get a runaway condition that's they're being fueled by something other than the diesel being fed to the engine. So usually like the crankcase oil. They could have had any number of other things. It could have just had a communication failure between the throttles that the pilot was using and the engine itself. Like he could have been trying to adjust things and it's not doing anything.
Wow.
So yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I figured it's not. It probably wasn't as simple as just like short bridge, tall boat. We like to you like to bring it down to its basic elements online, but yeah, no, it's fascinating. I don't know much about boats, but it's interesting to get your perspective on that because I know you do.
Yeah, yeah. I really look forward to seeing what the report says.
I do too now.
It always leads to better results in the future. Even people down to, like, even if you're not driving a tall ship, you learn from other people's mistakes when you operate in these realms. And I'm sure you do the same. Like I'm sure you working on my taxes isn't the same as working on some big corporation, but
Yes. Yeah, yeah, different tools for different stuff for sure. Yeah. I mean, and like, yeah, I guess a different route in that case as well. So yes, that's a good metaphor.
um, bringing it back around. Anything? We got 2 minutes left. Anything you want to close out with? Anything you want to tell folks? Um,
I would just say that in these tough times, and that doesn't need to be political. Like that is, stock markets are down. Like uh, unfavorable legislation is pretty a pretty good bet. I would say it's time for most people to circle the wagons fiscally. I would if you don't have a budget, reach out to your local accountant and get one going. If you are paying thousands of dollars in taxes, understand why and plan for that because I think we're going to be going into some hard times here soon, and I think you want to be able to maximize every dollar you got. And I don't think you have a lot less to waste, I think, in the next coming years. So
mhm.
reach out to your friendly accountant and plan ahead because I think we're in for some stuff here.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. Yeah, I do want to say, I want to, I voted yesterday. I'm an independent, so I didn't get really to vote for anything other than the ballot measures, but even those ballot measures are important in a city like Philadelphia. But it does look like Larry Krasner won the primary, so he's likely going to win the election. There currently isn't a Republican candidate for district attorney in Philadelphia. Um, I I I gotta say I've met the man. I've heard him speak. I think he has a rather, for what it's worth, I think it's more pragmatic than I would be. But yeah, he's a pragmatic way of looking at crime and crime reduction. And I'm kind of glad that he, is still going to be our DA.
I don't know much about how I mean I know about his approach and I know a little bit about his background, but I do know a lot about the people who don't like him a lot. So that makes me think that it's probably a good thing that he got reelected. So I'll just say that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's
Thank you
11
so much for
o'clock,
having me.
so we're gonna head out. And yeah, we've thrown up your URL, I believe, in the comments. But thanks for coming out today, and look forward to having you back. Hopefully, next time we can get you back on before tax
Yeah,
season really starts.
yeah. I would be more than happy to do that. And yeah, we'll probably be a lot more new stuff in there that we could definitely touch on for sure.
All right, all right. I'm gonna go up to one of me, and I really appreciate you joining me. Look forward to having you back on.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you to my audience. Really appreciate you joining us this week and every week. I know it's been a couple of weeks since I've been on. I apologize. The aforementioned boat and boat business took my attention away for a little bit. And you know, like there's a lot going on in politics, but you know, sometimes we don't have a lot going on in the arts, so we don't have a lot of guests to bring you. But tune in. I believe we do have a guest next week. Let me pull up my calendar here. Oh no, we don't have a guest next week. But keep subscribed to our channels. Subscribe to our Facebook, our YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Blue Sky. We do post regularly, even when we're not going live with video and interviews. And we keep you up to date and informed as best as we can. And we really appreciate you joining us. If you like what you see, please consider contributing to our Patreon, patreon.com/LightThiefProductions. And if you have any thoughts or things that you need covered, please get in touch via Patreon or our email address. Thanks so much, and enjoy the rest of your week, everybody.